Do you know what truly separates men who are respected from men who are forgotten? It's not the money, it's not the looks, it's not even the charm, it is presence. A masculine man never chases because he understands one universal truth. What is truly his will never require him to beg, to plead, or to lower himself. When a woman disrespects his worth, when she plays games, when she chooses another path, he doesn't fight for her attention. He simply disappears. And in that silence, in that absence, his power speaks louder than any words he could ever say. The man who chases becomes predictable, needy, and replaceable. The man who disappears becomes unforgettable. Why? Because absence creates space for realization. His disappearance forces her to confront the truth. He was the prize, and she lost him. A masculine man is never afraid of walking away because he knows that his value is not determined by who stays. It is determined by who he is. When a man chooses disappearance over chasing, he is not running away from love. He is standing tall in the most powerful form of self-respect. Disappearance is not about punishment. It is not about playing games. And it is not about trying to manipulate anyone. It is about a man making the quiet but firm decision that his dignity matters more than any temporary validation from someone who cannot see his worth. A man who chases is communicating, whether he realizes it or not, that he is willing to sacrifice his strength, his pride, and his essence just to keep someone who is already showing signs of slipping away. But a man who disappears is sending the opposite message. I know my value and I will not compromise it for anyone. Dignity is the foundation of masculine energy. A man can lose money and earn it back. He can lose opportunities and create new ones. But the moment he loses his dignity by begging, pleading, or running after someone who disrespects him, he loses the very core of his presence. That loss is not easily rebuilt because the world sees him as a man who gave away his crown just to be noticed. Masculine men know this truth deeply, which is why they choose disappearance. Walking away is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. Think about it. When you chase, you put yourself in a position of imbalance. You are saying your attention is more valuable than my self-respect. And when you give someone else that kind of power over you, you no longer stand as a leader of your own life. You become a follower of their moods, their games, and their decisions. But a man who disappears shifts the power back to himself. He takes control not of the other person, but of his own story. His disappearance says, I am not afraid to be alone. I am not afraid of silence. And I am certainly not afraid of losing someone who does not recognize me. Disappearance is the language of strength. It is the language of boundaries. It is the language that separates a man who is emotionally grounded from a man who is emotionally enslaved. Women deep down respect the man who refuses to compromise his dignity. They may test him. They may push him. But when he disappears instead of chasing, they are reminded that he is not ordinary. He is not desperate. He is not replaceable. He is different. And it is precisely this difference that makes him unforgettable. Protecting your dignity through disappearance does not mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to never let your value be questioned. It means you know love should be freely given, not begged for. It means you know connection should flow naturally, not be forced through chasing. In silence, you protect your crown. In disappearance, you protect your soul. And that, above all, is what keeps a man truly masculine. Silence is one of the most misunderstood powers a man can ever possess. Most people confuse silence with weakness, with indifference, or with having nothing to say. But the truth is, silence in the hands of a masculine man is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is presence. It is magnetic power. When a man chooses silence over chasing, over arguing, or over proving himself, he shifts the entire dynamic of the relationship. He no longer plays by someone else's rules. He sets the tone by refusing to engage in noise. And that silence carries more weight than any words ever could. Think about this. When you chase, you are constantly explaining yourself, constantly trying to prove your worth, constantly justifying why you deserve to be chosen. But when you step back and embrace silence, you stop feeding the situation. You stop adding energy to what drains you. You create a void. And it is in that void that realization begins. People only realize the value of something when it is no longer within reach, when the presence they took for granted is replaced by an echoing silence. That silence becomes louder than any argument you could have made. It becomes a mirror that forces the other person to confront their own choices. Silence is magnetic because it creates mystery. It makes people wonder what you are thinking, what you are doing, and why you are no longer reacting the way they expected. In a world where most men beg, chase, and fight for attention, the man who chooses silence stands apart. He cannot be predicted. He cannot be controlled. He cannot be pulled into games. And that unpredictability makes him powerful. It makes his presence felt, even when he is not around. His silence speaks of discipline, of restraint, of a strength that does not need to prove itself. Silence is not just about what you don't say. It's about the energy you hold. A masculine man who embraces Lent carries an aura that others cannot ignore. When he walks away without drama, when he chooses not to respond to manipulation, when he simply disappears instead of chasing, he creates a gravitational pull. People are drawn to him not because he is trying to attract them, but because his silence forces them to feel the absence of his presence. That absence burns deeper than any words could. Women especially feel the impact of masculine silence. Words can be debated, excuses can be ignored, arguments can be twisted, but silence cannot be argued with. Silence cannot be dismissed. It lingers. It stays in the back of the mind. It makes her replay everything she did and everything she said, because now there is no response to cover her actions. Silence makes her confront herself. And that confrontation is far more powerful than any chase or plea you could ever give her. A man who knows the power of silence does not fear losing anyone. He does not panic when someone pulls away. He does not collapse when tested. He knows that in his silence, he holds the highest ground. He knows that by not reacting, by not giving his energy away, he multiplies his value. And the more he multiplies his value, the more magnetic his presence becomes. That is why silence is not emptiness. It is mastery. It is the art of letting your absence speak louder than your presence. It is the weapon of the strong, the shield of the wise, and the crown of the masculine. A masculine man does not waste his life proving himself to those who cannot see him. He does not lower his crown to be accepted, nor does he beg to be chosen. His silence, his disappearance, his refusal to chase. These are not signs of weakness, but the purest reflections of strength, because at the core of masculinity lies a deep knowing. What is real will never need to be forced, and what requires you to abandon your dignity was never meant for you. Chasing is noise, disappearance is power, and silence. Silence is the echo that reminds her who he truly was all along. It leaves a mark that no words could replace, no arguments could erase, and no other man could replicate. The masculine man does not demand respect. He embodies it. He does not run after what slips away. He lets it go, trusting that life will align him with what belongs. In the end, this is the ultimate truth. Men who chase lose themselves, but men who disappear find themselves. And when a man finds himself nothing and no one can take that power,